There's a lot that AI can't do. Yeah, you can build a bot and you can build the infrastructure and stuff like that, but from a service side, but how good of a customer service is AI? They're not going to know. They're not going to build that relationship with you over the course of 8, 10 years. They're going to just know the simple, hey, here's this fact.
All right, welcome everybody back to the Leadership Lens. We've got a really exciting discussion for you today. On the show, we have Griffin Wilson, who is the Vice President of EmployCo. Not only is the Vice President of EmployCo, but he's a long-standing friend of mine. And we actually at SearchWorks just so happen to use EmployCo as our PEO. EmployCo provides customized HR solutions that help businesses reduce their employee benefits and workers' compensation premiums, while also offering payroll processing and strategic HR assistance. So if you are a small or medium-sized business and you don't want to deal with kind of the hubbajaloo of human resources, or you don't have the folks on staff that maybe can go about negotiating lower prices for things, or you're not that size, they're a really, really great option for you to kind of use for some of that stuff. So appreciate you very much for being with us here today, Griffin.
No, I appreciate the invite, and and then throw out to EmployCo for being a SearchWorks client, and likewise, we've used SearchWorks before for a couple roles, and it's ironic that the amount of information that I've learned from SearchWorks from the recruiting space. We used to do in-house recruiting years ago. And probably 10 years ago, and we got away from it to more so focus on the core capabilities of EmployCo with HR. And when it comes to recruiting, there's a lot of knowledge that I learned from you, whether it's videos or non-videos, and how much information to get from the prospect, how much information to get from us, and just the do's and don'ts from the core aspect of recruiting. So I want to thank you for that, and then continuing to educate not only myself but our company within the recruiting realm of the do's and don'ts as things are continuing to change, especially in Illinois. With AI, and they're trying to pass legislation. I think I could be wrong, but I believe January 1st with implementing AI into recruiting, and if you add it, you have to notify that person. So the ever-changing landscape, I'm very grateful for our relationship. But EmployCo, we're based in Chicago. We're family owned. We provide outsourced HR services to small and medium-sized businesses across the country, whether it's a 5-10 person startup to 4,000 people and everything in between. Everyone is scared when they hear outsourced HR of like, oh my God, you're gonna reduce our employee count or fire some people. It's like, no, we're here to be your strategic partner. You hired this HR person, whether it's a VP of HR or a business partner for a specific role. And we're there just to support them and allow them to do their job, and for us to do things that they don't necessarily have the time to do, or the strengths, or if they need additional services, we can be there for them. For the small to mid-sized companies that don't have an HR department, we act as their HR department. So for a few companies, we're actually in their phone log if they need help with sexual harassment training, onboarding reviews, handbooks, multi-state compliance, all of that fun jazz that necessarily a CEO or CFO want to take care of. We handle that for them. And then an added benefit is the health insurance renewal, which I'm sure we'll get in touch of utilizing a PEO like EmployCo, where we buy health insurance on behalf of tens of thousands of people. In Illinois, if you have more than 50 employees, Blue Cross Blue Shield starting your renewal at 25%. So if you have 50 employees, 25%, you really have to think about your budget for next year. And so with EmployCo, our renewal is significantly cheaper than that, and you can reduce your buying power. So there's a lot of benefits to it, and we're available in all 50 states. And it's HR, recruiting, benefits. It's an ever-changing landscape by the month.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I'm just going to kind of dump this down a little bit for people here. So, if you're a large organization with hundreds or thousands or tens of thousands of employees, you've got some negotiating power against the healthcare companies. And you can actually try and bring down your premiums a little bit to ensure that you give your people exactly what they need, but you're also not going to be overpaying. Now, for some smaller and mid-sized businesses, we don't have that negotiation power.
Yeah.
And so one of the benefits to working with a private employment office, a PEO like EmployCo, is basically you take all of these small, medium-sized businesses and you put them into the same pool together. And as a group, they're able to basically negotiate against some of these firms. I was actually just watching a quick clip of Rob and Jason at your firm talking about how some of the premiums are going up by 75% for small, medium-sized businesses. And there's really not much that you can do to combat that. And so with EmployCo, they're able to really have some negotiating power, bring those premiums down, ensure that basically you're able to just to stay in business. I mean, the cost of these things are going up so exorbitantly. It's a major, major strain on some of these businesses. And so, you guys have a great business model for helping out folks like us.
Yeah, I mean, the health insurance market right now, it's. I was talking to Rob and a client of ours, and they said that they don't utilize us for health insurance, and said this is the highest renewal they've ever seen in 30 plus years. And what's unique about EmployCo is that when we provide the health insurance or any other ancillary benefits, you could be on one plan, and your CFO can be in another plan, and your marketing person could be on another plan. Where if you go to market on your own, you're going to need that 75% participation just to get one plan. Where with us, you have access to an array of HMOs and PPOs and a number of different plans that fit that what style of benefits that your employees want. Instead of saying, hey, this is your option, for an employee only, it's $1,500 a month. It's just like, holy smokes. I don't know how a lot of it's prescription drugs. Obviously, that's the rising cost. But it's tough.
Yeah. Well, to your point earlier about kind of being in addition to your internal HR team, some larger organizations, they have specific employees that are solely responsible for explaining benefits and answering, other employees' questions about how this works, what plan they should sign up for, these other types of things. And in this case, you have all that information, that knowledge in-house. So if I have an employee that asks me a question about benefits that I don't know, I just say, message EmployCo. Get on the phone with you guys and basically explain it much better than I ever would.
We try to streamline the process as simple as easy for all of our clients. If it's one less thing that you have to worry about and we can handle, we're there to be the solution to your challenges. We're not there to force you to work the way that we need you to work. We are entrepreneurial and customizable, where we'll work the way you need us to. If you want us to be super hands-on and help you with your renewals, if you want your employees strictly to go to us instead of going to you, there's a lot of ways and a lot of flexibilities that we help companies across the country navigate these HR and health insurance renewals. And simply as that, if you're not going to call the 1-800 number on the back of your health insurance call. You're going to call someone in our HR department that you work with, that on a first name basis, that will direct and handle your question right then and there. You're saving. Customer service is big right now, especially with AI. Nobody wants to call 1-800. That is the last thing they want to do, especially flying airlines. It's like, oh, okay, my flight's canceled. I got to call American Airlines 1-800 number. I'm going to get it bounced around. Where with us, we have no 1-800 number. We have no call center. Similar to you guys, it's all customizable. It's all about the personalization and relationship, where people really value that these days in the day of AI.
Yeah, I want to, I'm going to bring this back to my world a little bit in the recruitment landscape, in which we are presenting candidates. They're going through the interview process, and they're the chosen person for the role. And it tends to be my job many times to push out a verbal offer to that individual. And the amount of times that I hear them say, yeah, I mean, the offer sounds great, but I can't even verbally accept this without seeing the benefits package, because the amount of cost to the individual can change so much simply dependent on the benefits. I've actually seen, people decline offers because they go, I'm actually going to be paying 10 grand more, 15 grand more a year with this opportunity. I know you're giving me a $20,000 pay increase, but it's actually only more like $5,000 because my benefits are going to, the cost of my benefits is going to go up so much extremely. Even from a talent acquisition standpoint, not only just keeping employees, but gaining new employees and ensuring that they're happy and well taken care of. It's hugely important. It really matters. Trust me, when people are getting an offer and they're comparing it to where they're at, They're going line by line and they're looking at every single thing.
Oh,
I
I
don't care
believe it.
who you are. You're looking at dollars and cents at that point.
I mean, especially right now, I'd love to get your take and your opinion on, especially from a recruiting standpoint. The latest Gallup poll had showed that 51% of people are actually shopping in their current job. So how often when you're placing somebody, are they looking at multiple jobs right now, or are they just like, hey, I'll take what I can get? It's an interesting labor market right now, especially with tech and AI, but blue collar is completely different. I know that's, you do a lot in the manufacturing space, so I was curious your opinion on that side.
Yeah, when it comes down to plant floor people, that's not really a space that we deal with, and those jobs are continuing to stay pretty steady. When I talk to my clients about this, the types of businesses that we typically work with are not the Amazons of the world. They're not the Boeings of the world. They're the ones that are, kind of, mom and pop shops or, middle market types of businesses. And when you talk about AI, there are some things that maybe you can do that speed things up a little bit from an ERP perspective, or maybe you are able to get a little bit more data and information. But at the end of the day, they're not implementing robotics. I mean, we're still years and years away from the manufacturing sector actually having robots do any of the work. So those jobs ain't going away. Now, when you talk about the executive space, there's not a ton of new jobs being made. There's even, I went to an event a couple months ago in which they talked about, when there is attrition within a firm right now, it tends to be that people are quitting and management is saying, okay, well, that's just one more employee that we have on staff. We're not necessarily going to go and put someone new in place. Now, when you get to the VP C-suite level like we tend to play in, you do need someone in that chair. You can't have a whole list of executives that just don't exist and aren't implementing from a managerial and strategic level. But it's a soft market right now. There's no doubt about it. So, we don't have people who are juggling 2 or 3 offers simultaneously. That's just not the case. That's also not to say that if you are in a hiring position, it's going to be easy. There might be people that are looking, to your point, roughly 50% of people that are looking for a new job, they're still employed for the most part. They're just answering phone calls from recruiters. Yeah. They're maybe, powing around on Indeed or what have you. But that's not to say that they're going to make a move anytime soon. They're still going to be picky about what that decision is. And as the labor market, it's almost a double-edged sword, because when all the companies are trying to hire, there is less people in the market to take those jobs, and so the candidates are in a very high position. But when things are slowing, even if there is a lot of candidates that are available, and you might go, 50% of people are looking for a new job, they're also thinking, well, if I take a new job and there's some layoffs going on, I might be the first person out the door because I just accepted this new job. And then if I'm the first person out the door, then I'm not going to be able to get a new job after that. So they're going through this equation in their minds to say, should I make a move? And if I do, does that put my neck out a little bit to say I'm going to be one of the first people out? And if that does happen, and this is the market that's going to happen within, maybe it's not the best move to make. Maybe it's not the best move to make a move. So people get very confused on exactly what to do. And at the end of the day, as it always does, it matters how you treat the individual through the recruitment process, how you approach them. I mean, AI, I've had people ask me, Taylor, are you scared that AI is going to take away your job? And I've got people on one side who are hiring. I've got candidates who are people on the other side, and it's a human-to-human interface. And if the recruiting industry goes down, especially from an executive perspective, I think every other industry is already screwed. So I'm hoping that I'm at the end of the cycle if that's going to be the case.
I mean, that's similar to our industry. If you look at it from like a consulting service side, people are like, it's dying. Yeah, but at the end of the day, there's a lot of companies out there, more than half, that like to deal with the person-to-person interaction and that value that experience. And there's a lot that AI can't do. Yeah, you can build a bot and you can build the infrastructure and stuff like that, but from a service side, but how good of a customer service is AI? They're not going to know. They're not going to build that relationship with you over the course of 8-10 years. They're going to just know the simple, hey, here's this fact. They're not really going to get to know you. And that's unique about, SearchWorks as well, is that you really got, when we started our partnership years ago, is you really got to know our organization, who we really were, what type of candidate we were looking for, instead of just, hey, here's 10 resumes, I think these are good. It's like, hey, no, this guy can fit your organization as a human being from a culture standpoint, and that's what we valued most within the relationship, because you can teach anybody their services, but if they're not a good fit culturally, they're going to last 6 months and then they're going to butt heads. And so that's one thing that we really value working with you and your firm from that side. But from the AI, it's a challenge. It's every other headline, people are freaking out because there's this 15% job cut here, 20% job cut there. But in our industry, it's we're there to be a partnership with you. And a lot of these companies, they really value our relationship. They see AI from from a strategy standpoint of automating some tasks that might take several hours, reviewing data and such, but that's not really what our core focus is.
Yeah, one of the areas where I do think that AI will be the tip of the spear in my industry, I'll speak to that. But let's say, when we engage with a candidate who's kind of pre-qualified from looking at their background, we say, this looks like somebody we'd like to speak with. We reach out to them, and many times they'll say, yeah, let's have a call. This looks great. I watched the video job description. This hiring manager looks amazing. I wasn't really in the, market for a new role, but this really intrigued me. I'd like to speak with you. There will probably be a time in the not so distant future where at least some of the bigger firms, you go online to maybe apply to a job, or maybe even before you apply, and you say, hey, what is the PTO policy for a new person at this business? Okay, so what is the compensation package for this particular role? And you can actually ask the bot those questions, and it will be pre-programmed to give you the appropriate answers. But I'll tell you what, nobody's going to accept a job and start with a new business and quit their own role without talking to another human being
1,000%.
and double checking that. They're just not going to do it. There's a lot of companies out there that do kind of, AI interviewing, basically, where you would be sitting here and a bot would ask you a question and you answer the question and it's a recording. That might work for some more entry-level jobs, but when you're talking about directors, VPs, C-suite people, they're not going to sit in front of their computer and do that. They're just going to go, I'm not doing that. They require an extra level of service. They require extra,
1,000%.
Bit of tactfulness and attention and whatnot. And you need to be able to interact with those people at their level. And that's just not where they are. So this human-to-human aspect, I don't see it going away. I think that there's definitely places where it does have a time and place. But when I get in the job, I'm working with people. I'm not sitting in front of a computer and only working with a computer. That's just one tool that I have. And so I need to know that the people that I'm going to work with and the culture, to your point, is going to fit with myself. And you can't fake that. You can't have AI do that on your behalf.
And one thing that I think is hurting this next generation, that they might not necessarily be in the suite of director, but that mid-tier, even entry level. There's AI tools that people will download on their computer. And if I'm in an interview with you right now and you're asking me questions, it's actually on real time telling me what to say so that you know that I'm giving you the right answer instead of just being authentically yourself. Because I'd rather have somebody be authentically true to me rather than overhype themselves up. But that's just the day and age. They want it the easy route. They don't want to, admit that I'm wrong or mistaken me. That's the easiest thing. The easiest way to grow is either by mistake or acknowledging the mistake of what you did wrong or the challenge and overcoming that. Where nowadays people are like, okay, I got an interview, this is the type of company, this is who I am, but might not necessarily be who you are because you're trying to fit this role. And then you portray yourself as this big wig and you come into this role and they hire you. Based off the AI answers that it gave you, you could essentially be behind the 8 ball on your first day of work because you've overtold stuff that you don't actually know. So I think that's a portion where it might actually come to hurt this new wave of applicants.
Yeah. Well, and we've had candidates do that. We've been able to spot that out, and I can't tell you how many thousands of people I've interviewed over the course of my career, but it's definitely in the thousands. There's no doubt about it. And I haven't had it too much, but I've had people on my team who have gone like, this person's using AI. They sound
You just
like
see with
they're
their
using
eyes that
AI.
they
They're
hear.
looking off the screen, and that's part of the difficulty with phone calls and phone screens is that you can't see the person. So when I do my second round interview, and all of our partners do their second round interview, it's like this. I'm looking at the person, I'm seeing their expressions, I'm seeing kind of where they're looking, I'm forging a belief as to how confident they are when they're giving those answers. And when you're using AI, it's you go, okay, so tell me about X, Y, and Z. Well, when I was and they're
Yeah.
waiting for the AI to give the answer, and then when they say it, you're like, you're talking like a freaking robot. Like, this is not you. I can totally tell that this is BS. So get out of here. You're no longer qualified for this role. You're lying to me. You're out of here. So that's part of that human aspect that I don't see going away. It's so if you have a company of people, you need to hire people. You're not hiring bots. Maybe someday we'll get to the world in which companies are just machines, which is probably viable at some point, but we're
Yeah.
not there yet. And
No,
hopefully we're a
far
long
from
way
that.
away from it, because I don't know what people are going to do with themselves if they don't have a job.
I mean, that's an interesting thing. That's a longer term, way down the road. But at the end of the day, humans are here. You see, Elon Musk wants to put 1 million robots in people's households. But how effective is that? Some people might benefit from that. Some people might not. But it's going to be interesting. I think we're going to continue to see the evolution of where AI and tech is going. But I think both of our industries right now, I think all we can do is just stay in your own lane and focus on excelling and building up the best HR firm and the best search firm there is, because at the end of the day, people buy from people. People's not going to buy from an AI bot. And even from a sales side, we see it on the sales side all the time with new business. It's people are scared, but at the end of the day, a lot of people are buy off relationships, and that's the oldest form of purchasing something. I mean, if you go way back to the beginning of time, it's I valued my relationship with this person. They provided support and welcomed me, or whatever the case is, and it ended up being a good relationship, and you bought from the person.
Well, and I'll take the term relationship one little bit further, and that relationship has to be one that's grounded in trust. Because if you're trying to, in my world, let's say I interview 8 people, which I just did. I'm planning on sending my client 4. Because those are the 4 that I believe to be best. We presented those 8, and on our last phone call, I had already interviewed several of them. And I basically said, this person is a great candidate. They're technically qualified, but I'll be honest with you, they have not had the experience working within a private equity environment. And when I spoke to this individual, they were almost a little bit too white collar. They were almost a little bit too, Ivy League. And this is a business that it's in the construction space, and they've got a lot of kind of blue collar workers out there. And I'm not sure if this individual is going to be able to communicate with the controllers that they have and some of the accounting managers that they have that are in that business today. Now, they may farm those people out and kind of replace them over time, but for what you need in the next year or two until you make that transition, I'm not sure if this person is the best fit. And there's a level of trust there in just being honest with them about how I perceive this candidate to fit in their environment. Whereas a lot of people in my world will just sell every single candidate. They're all great. You should meet all of them. And if you interview somebody that I sent you and I'm not honest with you about that up front and say maybe it's not worth your time, and they went and interviewed 7 as opposed to 4, and 3 of them were a waste of time, what am I even here for? Now I'm just a salesman who's just trying to sell every single person, as opposed to actually using my expertise and my consultancy to ensure that you are only getting the best of the best and the ones that make the most sense for you to spend 45 minutes to an hour with, which for a lot of people is kind of a lot of time. I mean, you think of 7 candidates, that's 7 hours in interviews. You just lost an entire day of work as opposed to saving 3 or 4 hours, which in your world might be pretty valuable to you.
What are you seeing on the employer side? What are they looking for in candidates these days?
Well, I still have yet to see a whole lot of clients say, we need someone who's an AI expert. We've been working with some AI kind of startup-y type of companies where that is a piece of it, or they need to be a full stack engineer or what have you. But as of right now, that has not been the case so far. I don't think that there's been enough user adoption. So I'm not really seeing a whole lot different. It depends on the client, right? It depends on the hiring team. What are they specifically looking for that's right for their environment? So there isn't been one single thing that I can say across the board is different than last year, 2 years ago, 3 years ago. It's pretty much business as usual, I would say. But what I do think will end up happening in the next year or two is they are going to be looking for people that understand how to not only discover where AI can be useful within their business and on their teams, but more importantly, to gain user adoption. I think that that's one of the most difficult things. So you have these tools out there and you say, hey, we just bought, enterprise ChatGPT for all of our 100 people, but only 40 of them are actually using it. So how do you actually get people to start using it? So the training and the salesmanship of how this will make your life better and actually getting people to start using some of these tools, that I think is going to be something that I see a lot more moving forward. And it's just not really out there right now. There's AI consultants and whatever, but everyone's still kind of like fumbling around in this world. But I would guess that next year, and especially in 2027, that will be a key piece of what hiring teams are looking for.
Yeah, it's the newest trend. Everyone is a quote unquote AI consultant. Everyone's like, all they do is just introduce you to somebody else and they ask you, hey, can I charge, I'm going to bill you 30 grand for an introduction to somebody else that's actually going to do the work. It's just like the amount of people that I've had conversations with that say they have way more knowledge than I do in the space. I can't knock them that at all. But all they're doing is just introducing me to some tool that someone built that I have no idea that, am I going to use it? No. Are employees going to use it here? No. It's just, I don't know. I see the benefit, but at the same time, it's a distraction.
Mm-hmm. Well, and it can be. I know right now we have weekly meetings to work on the business. We talk about AI in every single meeting at this point.
Yeah.
Every single meeting. And I'm telling my people, you need to look for a way in which you can use AI to do this repetitive task. And they're doing that on their own. I'm allowing people to discover it on their own because I can't do it for them necessarily. They know their space better than I do. And we have found some ways to really expedite our processes. And some of my people are much, much, much more efficient in what they're doing. And it's making their lives a hell of a lot easier. So we are moving forward with it. But as of yet, things been groundbreaking. A lot of what we get, a lot of the questions I get from hiring teams is, how are you sourcing candidates? How are you finding people? And we've tried 3 or 4 AI tools that do different sourcing for us. And it might catch a candidate here, a candidate there that we didn't find, if you will. But AI is only as good as the information that is actually on the internet or what it has to work with. So unless every single person is putting all of their resume that's legit online, as opposed to saying, here's my crappy resume, make it better and make it, useful for this particular role or what have you. And that's another thing. You've got these job descriptions online. You've got candidates that have their resumes. They take their resume, upload it to ChatGPT, the job description, upload it to ChatGPT, and say, reformat this and make it as good of a resume as it can possibly be for this particular job. And then they use that resume to go ahead and apply.
Yeah.
So how do you know if that person's legit? How do you know if that's actually really what that person is able to bring to the table without actually interviewing the person and asking them open-ended questions and asking them to go a little bit deeper? Tell me a little bit more about this. Name a time when this happened and how you got over it. What were the accomplishments that you had? How did this turn out? Those are human questions that need to be asked because on paper, everyone can look amazing at this point because you're just basically using AI to reformat your resume to make it look as good as possible for the role.
Yeah. The way we look at it is, like I had mentioned earlier, similar to you guys, is we have no call center, we have no 1-800 number. You're not punching a ticket to get a hold of somebody. You really have that dedicated team, and we look at it from how can we increase the output and increase the efficiency of that output utilizing AI. So not from a bot standpoint, but how can the employees or the management team or the ownership group utilize AI to increase the efficiency of their output? Okay, here's a task that takes 7 hours. I can plug everything in. Obviously, it's going to take me 30 minutes to plug in because I have to give the information to them and say, hey, okay, I want you to act as a strategic thought leader within this industry. Here's all the information, help me build a blueprint for 2026 or 2027 or a 3-year outlook or whatever the case may be. But you have to give it the data. And it'll probably be close to what you're thinking in your head, but it just saved you an entire day of planning or an entire weekend of planning. And now you can go back, fine tune that. And obviously there's going to be edits, but we look at from increasing the output of your time and maximizing your time.
A funny story about the input of stuff. So I recently was the officiant at a good friend of mine's wedding, and I interviewed him I recorded the interview over Zoom.
For
I
the
interviewed
wedding.
her, recorded it over Zoom, and I took kind of what was said, uploaded it into ChatGPT, put in some of my own things, and said, write me an outline for an efficient speech, and it did. And it was okay, but it gave me a blueprint. I still went and put 12 hours into editing that further and adding things in and taking things out and really personalizing it and making it the way that I wanted it to sound. But it can give you a nice blueprint. It can be a good kind of jumping off point. Back in the day, you would sit in front of your Word documents and the little line was blinking and you're like, I got to start writing something.
Yeah.
You don't even know where to start. You're just kind of stuck. Well, now you can at least get a backbone of what to say or what you're thinking. And I still don't talk to ChatGPT. I know some people who get in their car and they just throw on ChatGPT and they have a conversation back and forth for the whole ride or whatever it is. I don't like that, really. I use it for certain
I'd rather just call you and vent to you about how bad.
Yeah, I'd rather just call you and we'll just have a conversation and we can get some ideas off the table. Anyway, it's been interesting. So that was I'm using it for stuff like that, but at the end of the day, there's not been a single time where I've used an AI tool, copy and pasted it and used it. I have to look through it. I have to make it my own. I have to make sure that it's legit and I'll hold my voice. AI ain't going to replace me. I'll tell you that. It's not going to replace how I speak to people.
Here's a good example that I used and a bad example. I'll start with the bad one. Similar to, speaking of weddings, I was at a wedding a couple months ago, and I was the guest of the wedding. And you know me fairly well. I like to be well dressed. I'm probably in a sport coat 6 days a week, and so I took the wedding invite. I didn't know anybody at the wedding. I took the wedding invite, the description of what I should wear as a male. I took my dates, dresses, her options, and I said this is what she's wearing this day for this, so on and so forth. I took pictures of all of my clothes. I said, give me an outfit. I was the worst dressed person at this wedding. Everyone was in a suit and tie, and I was in like khaki pants, suede loafers, and a jacket. I was like,
oh my God.
I walked out of my room. I was like, I'm so embarrassed. But I was like, you know what? I'm going to give it a go. And it was like, oh yeah, this is just what the invite's talking about. And I was like, this is brutal.
Funny. And you know what you're doing. What are you thinking?
I know. I overthought it. I thought I was going to give this a shot because I was talking to somebody that had helped utilized ChatGPT to redo their wardrobe, and he's like, oh yeah, this benefits. So I was like, all right, I'll give it a shot. I'll never do this ever again, ever. Yeah. I will simply go on my gut feeling. But from a strategic planning side, and as we revamp internal processes within our sales department, and creating a playbook and a blueprint for as we grow our department, and kind of a resource, I've been able to take the information that I have, work with AI to say, how should I make this more strategic, more hands-on for them, so that if they have questions, they don't necessarily have to go to me. They can just go back to their document and review some of the sections that I have in there, from whether it's KPIs, sources, centers of influences, whatever the case may be. And so I've been able to use it that way, and it's saved me so far. I mean, I'm not done with the project, but it's probably saved me at least 10 or 15 hours so far of just really like thinking it through. And a lot of it's stuff that I would have thought of or that I've had in other materials. I just wasn't thinking of it right then and there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's great. That's great.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate you coming on the show here, Griffin. Good to see you, as always. Per usual, we'll get some good golf in next year. And again, appreciate EmployCo for everything that you guys do for us. Wonderful organization. And thank you for your time coming on here today and for all of your expertise and just being a great guy and a great friend.
No, likewise. I appreciate the invite. It's been a pleasure. I feel like we could probably talk for the next 2 hours about a number of topics. But thanks, and it was a pleasure.
Yeah. Have a good one. Thank you.
You too.